Welcome to this debate where we will be discussing the legalization of sex work in Mexico. First, we need to understand what is the sex industry. The sex industry is the business of either or directly or indirectly providing sex-related products and services or adult entertainment. People who work in this industry are called sex workers. I, as first speaker of the in favor of the legalization of the sex work, I want to state the necessity of sex workers to be protected under the law. The Human Rights Watch has consistently found that sex workers are criminalized and therefore they are more vulnerable to violence, including rape, assault, and murder. These attackers benefit from the position of sex workers as some kind of underground organization. We need to put light on this community, the community of sex workers, because they need to be protected. Because they are not protected by law, they are forced to work on unsafe locations to avoid police. In the beginning of the year, in March of 2020, a group of organized sex workers went to the Senate and asked to be placed under the non-salaried workers law so they can be protected and therefore have benefits such as social security or the opportunity to have a retirement. For all workers must be protected by law, not only whose jobs are morally correct for people. With legalization comes regulation and protection, and that's what these workers are asking for. We need to understand that we have to stop the criminalization of this group. And in terms of exploitation, what is exploitation for you? Working 8 hours for a miserable pay of 80 pesos, or choosing your own hours and getting 500 pesos for 3 hours of work.
Sex work is the employment of people in the sex industry which sells sexual services. However, this industry is plagued by the heavy abuse from its clients to the employees. The first argument in pro is incorrect because it is generalizing an ideal reaction from the government and society. That's why the first reason why we are opposing this motion is that most sex workers enter the industry out of necessity and not because of a choice. For example, in the Netherlands, most sex workers were trafficked from their home country. These sex workers are people that become voluntary immigrants for sex work to satisfy the demands of this free market that is the sex industry. Therefore, it has been normalized for the poor to consider the poor to have the option of the sex industry as an option. Therefore, we are building upon a pillar on which we will believe that we should abuse the economically vulnerable.
Okay, Alexa, we are in favor of sexual legalization. And you first mentioned that there are a lot of victims in this market. But let me remind you something. The victims already exist and it is illegal. So it's not about you're in favor or not, it's about what we're going to do with the victims. So we are offering a solution because if sexual work is legalized, we're protecting the victims to set them free, becoming this work a consensual work. And also, you compare the case of the sexual legalization in Mexico with Netherlands. Netherlands is in Europe. So if we're going to make a comparison, we need to make it with a Latin American country, just like Ecuador. In Ecuador, sexual work is legal and it's already functioning very well. Women are gathering together with unions of sexual workers, and they are having identification cards being tested for sexual health. We also believe that this problem faces a lot of other issues that can be solved if it is legalized. For example, financial independence for women, because it will be a consensual work and it will be empowered for them. And we also combat the gender pay gap, pay gap, sorry. Also, the legalization of this work will create more jobs, more protected jobs for women. And these jobs will contribute to the national economy.
So, Mariana, you're saying that there will be positive economic effects on legalizing sex work. However, you're not considering the effects on the people's mental and physical health, because it, as a certified medical article that we found, it leads to serious negative long-term effects for the prostitutes, such as trauma, stress, depression, anxiety, self-medication through alcohol and drug abuse, eating disorders, and a greater risk of self-harm and suicide. It sends the message that it is irrelevant how the woman feels during sex, according to the article that I just mentioned. So these women are saying yes, but they don't know what they are being exposed to. And as Alexia said, it's a yes, but it's out of necessity, no, not pure empowerment. And so we state that we're against legalizing sex work, also because it could increase the probability of adult and child trafficking to satisfy the demands of the market and to sell more. So if you open the demand, if you open the offer, then the demand will increase, and people will start that child abuse and child trafficking will increase to put them into sex work. And also this is backed up because an argument that was used in favor of legalizing sex work in the Netherlands was that it would decrease or end child prostitution. But in fact, the number of children in prostitution increased more than 300% between 1996 and 2001, from 4,000 children to 15,000 children being abused. These children are trafficked from other countries, with a plethora of them originating from Nigeria. And it's not a matter of saying that it's illegal, but how is this law being respected or not? So we're preventing the child trafficking and abuse of being these children and women being used to sex work, because they're saying yes to it, but they don't really have a choice.
Okay, so as a general rebuttal, first, Alexia said that people will decline abused from the sexual workers, and well, if we legalize sex work, this will dignify these workers, and also they'll be protected by the law, and they will be able to access an insurance, so they won't be abused, because people will know that if they abuse them, they will be punished by the law. And also in the second argument, there was mentioned that there are trauma and side effects of sex work. Well, we want to point out and highlight the difference between sex work and sex exploitation, because sex exploitation is without the consent of the man or woman performing it, and it can include minors in it, such as you mentioned, child and everything. And in the other hand, sexual work, that is what we're supporting, is between adults only and with the consent of the woman or man performing it. So we also want to point out that human trafficking is not only sexual trafficking. Human trafficking, there's more than 10 types of human trafficking. So also that this human trafficking and sexual trafficking, sexual exploitation, is a crime, and that should be punished, but we're not defending sexual trafficking. Also, we want to highlight that women will not be objectifying by sexual work, because they are empowered to choose and to say no to clients, or whether they don't want to do it because they are choosing to have that profession. Also, to rebuild our case, we want to highlight the benefits of legalizing sex work, because first, of the financial dependence a woman would have, and second, to the access of insurance, health insurance, and also protection by the law, since if their rights are unrespected, law will be there to protect them. And finally, because by legalizing sex work, we will be dignifying and adding respect to these workers, as it is a recognized profession.
I must say I have some issues with your statements. Yet again, I must admit that either way, your intentions are good. Must say that stop criminalizing sex workers. It's something that it takes time. It's already an issue and with the stigma and society. And to destroy those perceptions will take decades of exposure of generations. It's not something that will happen overnight, and lives will be lost before the change is even set in our society. It's not sex exploitation, yet it's not safe. Even with the most organized of industries, they can't protect all of their employees outside their work hours, which by those, I must say that most of those will be after the sun has set and leading them into a vulnerable setting before, during, and after the shifts. Debt-free victims from the Black record is something that it must take a really big organization to just complete this mission. This organization must search and protect those who have been kidnapped and those who are being blackmailed. It still doesn't fix the trauma, and it still doesn't give their physical and psychological aid. There is still no way to find those victims, and it will only trigger more sex industries to do their evil deeds. Yet consent, it's not about fulfillment, it's about need. It's not actually moral. Stating sexual objectification and dehumanization to those who practice it.
So now the main points that were covered by the counterpart were that legalizing sex work will not only open the demand of the industry, but it will be the first solution to people who need it, and they will expose themselves and their mental and physical health to it. It will increase child and women trafficking and prostitution due to the high demand. It will reinforce the objectification of women. Women will not really have a choice, because they will always have the necessity, and they will put it first above what they really want and are willing to do. So now we can conclude that we cannot legalize something that we are not prepared for. Mexico is not prepared for sex work legalization. By showing you the statistics and negative effects that have been generated, legalizing sex work will only cause chaos in a country that can barely survive in terms of misogyny and women prostitution. As said in the arguments before, normalizing and opening the offer for people's consumption will only generate more demand. How can we regulate sex work if we can't even regulate the amount of women disappearing every day? Thank you.
Well, as we have stated, sex work has been present since Sumerian times, dating 2400 years before Christ. It is time that we stop criminalizing, setting them their rights. It is sex workers themselves that are coming forward in Mexico to be protected under the Mexican law. Also, Mexican law prohibits work. Once again, we are not talking about sex trafficking or human trafficking. We are talking about sex work, and which is consensual, is a consensual exchange between two adults relating sex-related products. With legalization, we can protect sex workers. So once again, I ask you, what is really exploitation? Working 8 hours for 80 pesos a day, or working 3 hours for 500 pesos a day? We stand in favor that law must protect all workers, not only the ones which people consider morally correct. Thank you.